So this video is an update and a recap and a redo and a whatever of the previous Arcane Bullet Hell Delsere's Magnum Opus build. I posted... Has it been a month already? Jeez. So we're going to do a quick overview of the build, and then we're going to go into the Rift, which would be a 47. So the cornerstone of the build is Arcane Orbital Iteration, obviously. And with the bonuses from Delsere's and what it does with slow time, it's a really solid way to just pour out billions and billions of points of damage. Slow time, point of no return, is our slow time ability that also gets a huge bonus from Delsere's Magnum Opus. For our magic weapon and our armor, we're using conduit and force armor respectively. This will help mitigate your arcane power losses, and this is for survivability. We're using magic missile glacial spike for its freeze rather than its damage, though it does, it deals a little damage. Charge blast would deal a lot more damage given that it's arcane, but it doesn't do anything aside from damage, so the freeze is more helpful right now. Rounding out our active abilities is black hole spell steal, and off season this is kind of what I'm using right now, but I'm also debating whether or not to go back to using teleport, but I'm using black hole for now. Really, I think with Ransler's Folly, Energy Twister, Wicked Wind would work the best as a snare and as that ability, but right now we're using Black Hole. For passives, we're using Prodigy to get our arcane power back with our magic missiles. Astral Presence to mitigate the loss on the orbs, and that 20 is basically 20 additional arcane power is basically another orb. Blur for survivability, and Unstable Anomaly for survivability. For the items, Gesture of Orpheus is pretty much best in slot for the weapon. You could possibly go with others, but with Gesture of Orpheus, it makes it so that it's 3 missiles, and then you can pop your pop your slow time. 3 missiles, pop your slow time, or orbs, missiles or orbs, so pop your slow time instead of 4 or even 5, depending on your build with your gear. Offhand, a Triumvirate is going to be your best in slot. I don't have an Ancient one, unfortunately, and I think that's really what's keeping me out of beyond like the rifts I'm at, in terms of just raw damage output. Because, yeah, I can do a 47. I tried a 48 and a 49 today, and I failed at both. And I'll post the 48 if anyone's interested in seeing it, even though it's a failure of a rift. I'm using Crown of the Primus in this setup, because of all of the utility it brings to the table is really solid. Because with slow time you'll end up with a greater cooldown on it, and the speed reduction's up. Monsters deal less damage, monsters take more damage, monsters get stunned when they try to enter or leave slow time, and you and your allies get an attack speed bonus, and it's just a really solid bit of utility added in. Now that means I'm not using Focus and Restraint this time. Instead I've got a Ring of Royal Grandeur to keep the set together and have that helmet. And I'm using the Convention of the Elements. And Convention of the Elements, in about the same time it takes you to, at least in my opinion, keep your damage going with Focus and Restraint. Convention of the Elements gives you about the same amount of damage output. And at this point, Convention of the Elements and whatever other ring with Focus and Restraint, it's really debatable and up to personal preference which one is better. Focus and Restraint is more consistent damage-wise, in that you'll be able to keep your damage up all the time. But Convention of the Elements opens up your other ring slot for, Ring of Royal Grandeur or Halo, or even a Stone of Jordan if you want to throw that in there and you don't really care about Crown of the Primus. But for me personally, I am enjoying Convention of the Elements right now. I may go back to Focus and Restraint. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so otherwise it's the shoulder gloves, chest, pants, and boots for Delsere's Magnum Opus. Your bracer slot could really be whatever, but I'm using Ancient Parthon Defenders because this is a stun, and it works great with getting that damage reduction bonus. Now, again, if I were playing Seasons, I would probably be using Ransler's Folly, and you can also still use Reaper's Wraps there. That is entirely a legitimate choice. This just works good for the damage reduction and defense. For my belt, your belt and your amulet are also open slots, and for me I'm using the Witching Hour and an Eye of Elich. You could also go with Black Thorns or even Tel Rasha's 2-piece in those 2 slots. And you can also use a Moonlight Ward there, depending on how you want to play. But I just can't pass up the 2 defensive things on here for the ranged attack reduction, and the reduced duration of control and Paragon effects. It's just too good for me to pass up, honestly, for defense. But Moonlight Ward is entirely a viable option there. And here you could go with String of Ears, or like I mentioned, the Blackthorns, Talrasha 2 pieces are also solid options in my opinion. And I believe that covers all my oh, gemming. I'm using Bane of the Trapped is necessary for this, entirely necessary for this build. It's too good to pass up, because that will just up the damage from both the slow time dot and from your orbs in the slow time. Zay's Stone of Vengeance is also a really solid option, because you don't really want to be anywhere near the enemy with this setup. And it's also very handy to have like the Rift Guardian way in the corner while you're in an orb, they're in an orb, and you just get all that bonus damage from Zay's Stone of Vengeance. And I'm using Molten Wildebeest Gizzard because I kind of fell in love with this gem. It's great for healing yourself up with, it's basically damage mitigation on that. But also the shield is just free hit points, as far as I can tell, that recharge every 4 seconds. And it's just a really, really solid defensive gem. You could also, for your gem options, go with Bane of the Powerful, or Esoteric Alteration would probably work there as well. And I think that's it for gemming. And real quick, Paragon, it's your standard loadout. Movement speed first, then intelligence. Crit hit chance and crit hit damage, then attack speed. Defense is armor, then life, then all res. And utility is area damage and resource cost reduction. Probably resource cost reduction first, then area damage, then life on hit. So that would be the build setup. We're going to jump right into the Rift. And we're in the Rift. The Rift did start early. That's always good when your Rift start early and it's not like a champion pack. Because I tried to do a 49 earlier, and the first thing out of the gate was like a champion Mallet Lord. Not fun. It's very not fun. So one of the key things with this build is rotating between the missiles and the orbs. It's to keep your arcane power up, but it's also to keep your buff up. And you really only need 1 missile every so often to keep the buff going. And as you can see with the Crown of the Primus, you get a lot of slow time bubbles going. And it's always handy to have that, because you'll just keep a ton of pressure off of you while you burn through things. I kind of have a bad habit of actually shooting magic missiles out when I should really just stick with the orbs, but it's kind of like focus and restraints thing that almost became a force of habit. So I'll occasionally just sit there throwing magic missiles when I really shouldn't be. So here's why I love Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. My shield is back up, which means when he yanks me in, I don't instantly get killed. And I can survive like the frozen coming at me. It's so good and so handy. Like, I think Esoteric Alteration does have a point and serve a purpose in keeping you alive with dealing with non-physical elemental things, but man, is Molten Wildebeest Gizzard really nice. I don't know what it's like in higher than like 49, but yeah, I'd try to keep it going as long as possible and get it nice and built up. So I do also have the bad habit of like getting hung up on single enemies sometimes. But with some enemies, you just really don't want them behind you. If you have to kite or something. Oh, that's a missed black hole. If you have to kite or something, because there's like Exorcists or the phase beasts. It's just kind of a pain to have them behind you. You really don't want it.
Still waiting.
So Wallers. Wallers are sort of one of your more annoying affixes to deal with this. And I have considered using Event Horizon with this build, just because you can get Wallers Waller's Walls out of your way. But really, with the way they form, there's almost always a way you can get out of them, even if they're like the yellow elites, or Man Carver. Even if it's those guys, you'll still have often you'll still have little spaces to get out, and it's really rare to actually have the walls be detrimental. But yeah, Black Hole Event Horizon I think is another good choice for your black hole if you choose to go with it, because you'll have a way to get things that could kill you not near you, if that makes sense. So in that hallway you saw me shoot just a random glacial spike, and I do that to keep the buff up, but also throwing out something that'll freeze enemies is actually kind of a good way to protect yourself. And if there's like the enraged phantasms, you can oftentimes just freeze one before they ever get to you to do their soul suck thing. By the way, enraged phantasms are a pain to deal with. I'm sure everyone's aware of that. But I don't think that can be said enough times. Like, you just need to keep repeating that. Exorcist, Exarchs, and Enraged Phantasm. What is it with things that start with the letter E in this game and being hard? I did get lucky on this rift spawn though, because it's all very slow things that stay relatively far away from you. So it's like right here, it's pretty much just like I do kind of like, oh, I have to get away, but then it's like, oh, I can just shoot through the doorway at whatever this is. So my Templar is just sitting in the doorway. Yeah, there are walls getting in my way, but it's like things like this are. See, like one enemy just wanders up behind me, and I don't like it, but yeah, it's like it's like I got really lucky in that the enemies can't get through the doorway, so I basically get to sit here and hit them with my orbs. So I do want to point out the big weakness affixes. Our Waller is, I would consider, a fairly sizable weakness for this build, just because you can't shoot through the walls. But the Nightmare affix is reflex damage, because when the reflex damage is on, the dot will just shred your hit points, because your slow time is a dot, which means it's constantly hitting the reflect damage, and if it's constantly hitting the reflect damage, it'll be constantly hitting you. Thunderstorm is another bad one, but I think Thunderstorm is bad for anyone that's sort of a squishier ranged character. But this is why I like Molten Wildebeest Gizzard, because it... Yeah, that's a death. It does give you the, oh, I have to move out of this thing time. And actually, I was a little confused there as to whether or not that was the same Unholy Thrall that was bugging me before. I mean, I know it's not, but it's like, oh, it's another Unholy Thrall that's bugging me. Is that the same guy just following me through the rift? Desecrator, Plagued, and Poisoned can be a pain, but you can at least get out of them. And obviously, like, Jailer is also a pain to deal with. But yeah, for me, the biggest one is reflex damage. And sort of enemies you don't like with this build are things that can jump on you from far away. I think that's true again for any ranged characters. Just something that charges you or jumps on you is just not gonna be fun to deal with, especially in mass, like Winged Assassins or Lacunis. I really do wish I had a higher number on this rift, because it's all easy stuff to deal with. I mean, it kind of makes it not exciting or impressive to play through, but at the same time, it's like it does definitely make it a definitely make it like more fun in that I'm winning going through it. And right now, the highest I've done right now that's been successful has been this one. It's been the 47. But I have survived a 48, and I got angry at a 49 and quit it. But if I roll good mobs, I could probably handle a 49 with this. So I do think that while this isn't as like numbers powerful as a Talrasha build, I think it's entirely viable to use it in higher end greater rifts. I just need better. I think I mentioned this. I need a better triumvirate first, but there are a few pieces of gear I have that aren't ancient, and obviously I have things that are imperfectly rolled right now. But I do think the Delsere's Magnum Opus build is entirely a viable build, at least in my opinion. In my like half casual opinion. So yeah, here. One of the things about that wall I've noticed is it'll oftentimes come with a guy that's putting other things in the wall or chunk. And the thing I try to do is get into the corner a lot of times to avoid like the wormhole that's there. But yeah, even though this guy has Thunderstorm and Waller, it's not hard to deal with because he's a zombie. And it's just shooting him with the orbs. So one of the things, I don't think I've had a good example of it yet, is rotating on convention of elements. And that's one of the things you gotta really keep track of, is waiting for your Arcane to roll around so you'll know when to just spam as many orbs as possible. And yeah, you'll oftentimes not nail it, but when you do, it is entirely a crap ton of damage. I think it's, for me, it's something like 3 to 4 billion per orb, depending on enemy distance and whether I've hit with a spell steal. So yeah, like right there, that would be an example of, that's actually an example of hitting the Arcane in the sweet spot with a black hole on, and that group of enemies is just gone. And it's really awesome, because you do it, and it actually feels like you're the one doing it. Because one of the things I'm not big on with Talrasha is it feels more just like you're trying to spam your 4 spells over and over and over again, and it doesn't feel like you're strategizing or using tactics at all. You just get the 4 spells rotating, get the 4 spells rotating, and then let your Hydras kill things. I mean, even with a meteor-based one with a Grand Vizier, it still has that feel of rotate your spells. With this, I at least feel a little more like I'm interacting with the game. And it's like, yeah, it's not as efficient or as quote-unquote good as Talrasha's, but I find it more fun, quite honestly. And I think that's, ultimately, more fun is more important in my eyes. I mean, yeah, it's fun to have, like, the best build and win, but if it turns boring doing it, then it's just not fun, really. That's what I really disliked about the Firebird set, was it just wasn't fun to me. It was just launch Hydras and Blizzards and run away. That was my phone. Anyways, I pulled Rhyme, and Rhyme is actually a really easy Guardian to deal with when you've got this set up. He doesn't have any, like, I mean, I die once against him a little later, but he doesn't have anything really too stupid to deal with. The only thing is I screw up in where I kite him to in the middle here. I go in this room, which is the correct move, because this room is a nice big square. But I make the mistake of going into one of the hallways. I think it's right here-ish. I make the mistake of going in the hallway, and the one thing about Rhyme is I don't think he's that... I generally don't like fighting him in tight quarters, because he can overlap the ice things and really ruin your weekend. But also, I have trouble shooting him through the doorways, because it's all straight line stuff, so it's like I have to be in this enclosed space with this guy. And, like, I can't see what he's doing. I can't see what's going on in the room, so I go to basically look, and then I walk into the thing and die. And I do... That's the only edit I'm going to do, is editing out the wait time on the death. So I decide to actually just stand in this room and wait for him to come in. Yeah, and that, like, those... The frozen missiles he shoots deal basically nothing to me, thanks to Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. So what I'm doing here, and what I think the best strategy to do is with the orbs, is rotate around so that you're firing on Arcane and fire mostly, and you're recharging your Arcane power on ice and lightning, because the ice will give your magic missiles a bonus, or cold I should say. The cold damage bonus will give your magic missiles a bonus, and your fire and thunder aren't going to give you any bonus, but just for rotation to make sure you're hitting the enemy with your max output, you generally want to be on the Arcane for the orb shooting. And the other thing is to try and put a slow time bubble on the enemy and on yourself, so you're shooting as fast as possible. And we're about to put Rhyme away, and that's what, and like try to I would say keep your distance to get your Zay's Stone of Vengeance, but really it's all about just getting your damage out as best you can. Sorry about that little edit there. I had to add a little on to keep talking. But yeah, that's the Rifts. It was GR47. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video and my blabbering over the Rift. And I'll see you guys next time for more Diablo or Grim Dawn or Pigeons.